caregivers and not necessarily those of this station, its staff, management, or sponsors.
Are you a family caregiver? Are you caregiving for someone who can no longer take care of themselves? Are you overwhelmed? This is Caregiver Solutions Info with Marcia Teal. Marcia will be hosting an hour of true stories and information, tips and updates of the latest research and necessary information in the caregiving field, focusing on you, the family caregiver. An Alzheimer's disease and dementia care expert, Marcia has 15 years of hands-on experience at Arden Courts, a leader in assisted living dementia communities here in the U.S. Marcia covers everything you need to know as a family caregiver, especially if you care for a loved one with Alzheimer's disease or other related dementia or chronic illness. If you have a friend or relative that is also a family caregiver, call them now. They won't want to miss a minute. And let them know they can watch on caregiversolutions.info. And they can listen on WNN 1470 AM in South Florida or nationally on the iHeartRadio app. Now, sit back, relax, and learn from our host, Marcia Teal, as she brings information to you that may just be the caregiving solution you need.
Hi, everyone, and welcome to Caregiver Solutions Info Show. I'm so happy that you could join us today. We have another wonderful program for you, and I'm very excited. I'm actually on location, and we're live from Fort Myers, Florida. So it is so important to make sure that caregivers continue to receive this wonderful educational information every week, that sometimes we're not in the studio in Boca Raton, Florida. So we take the show on the road so that we can bring you more experts in different fields all across Florida. I'm very excited that you've joined us today, whether you're on your iPhone or your smartphone and you've downloaded the iHeartRadio app under WNN 1470. You can hear us anywhere you are. Or if you're on your computer or smartphone, you may be watching us live on caregiversolutions.info. Whichever way you're here, I'm glad that you're here. So today we're going to be talking about a very, very important topic. It's called elder law. Now everybody's heard of attorneys and lawyers, but not everybody knows about an elder law attorney and what they do and why it's important as people age to make sure that you are getting the right information from the right person at the right time in your life, especially if you're a caregiver and you're caring for someone that has some type of dementia, Alzheimer's, vascular dementia, Parkinson type dementia. It doesn't matter what kind, or if you're a caregiver caring for someone that just can't care for themselves. You become their person, as they say. And as their person, you are responsible for making all of the decisions that come along down the road. Lots of decisions, not only about financial decisions, but also about medical decisions and more that you don't even know that you're going to have to make types of these decisions. So you want to be prepared and make sure that you're able to do that legally, ethically, morally. And so today we have a wonderful expert in her field. I'm going to read her bio to you because I don't want to miss anything. She's very well respected here in the Fort Myers area. Her name is Britton Swank, and this is her law firm. Britton is a member and officer of the Academy of the Florida Elder Law Attorneys, as well as a member of the National Academy of Elder Law Attorneys and the Florida Bar Association. She concentrates her practice in the areas of real estate, probate, guardianship, Medicaid, and is accredited by the Veterans Administration. Graduating with high honors, Britton received her Juris Doctorate in December of 2002 from the University of Florida Levin School of Law and was admitted to practice in Florida in 2003. Britton is passionate about her commitment to the Alvin Dubin Alzheimer's Resource Center here in Fort Myers and has been on their board of directors since 2004, and is my very high pleasure to introduce to you Britton Swank. Hello, come join me.
Well, I appreciate the invitation. It's exciting to be here, and thanks for having me.
Well, I'm so glad that you are here, and I am excited also. We're using a little bit of new technology, and we've got real microphones. We're off-site. We're not in the
There,
studio.
there are a lot of cables, a lot of dials. I'm glad you know what you're doing. It looks a little intimidating to me, but
Well, I'm glad you know what you're doing because speaking of intimidating, being a caregiver can be very intimidating.
absolutely,
And I know you
absolutely.
see a lot of that. So, how long have you been in practice?
Um, as you could tell from my bio, it's been about 15 years. I
Mhm.
stopped really paying attention somewhere after 10. I just stopped keeping track. But I actually have, I guess, a family connection to caregivers. And in part, that's why I went back to law school after, sort of a second career for me, just because of going through some things with my own family.
Wow. All right. So, we're going to talk about that because I think that when you're an expert in your field and you're a professional in elder law, plus you have firsthand experience with the disease, with caregiving, I think that you're able to identify and put yourself in the shoes of the caregivers that you help. And I think that's really, really important.
It was my, in my family connection, it was my grandfather. And so, like a lot of grandchildren, I sort of idolized my grandfather and my grandmother as well. They had this great American story, in my humble opinion. My grandfather lost his parents very young, really had to be self-sufficient at an early age. He served in the military, worked his way through college, and ultimately went to medical school. He ended up being I think the oldest person in his class. He ended up also at the Mayo Clinic. So he just really worked very hard during his lifetime. Was this great fun man, and he met my grandmother in the operating room. He said she had beautiful eyes. He could tell that with her mask on. He couldn't tell a lot else, but he liked those eyes. And so that was sort of the start of their story together. And I think their background, in particular, my grandmother's background, because of her medical knowledge, I think she felt even more of an obligation to be able to be that super caregiver.
So, what happened? Your grandfather was diagnosed with.
We think he had Alzheimer's disease. Once we realize that, and you have that diagnosis, or suspected diagnosis, and you look backwards, you can see that it had been going on for some time, and that he became more and more dependent on my grandmother, and almost in a way, she was sort of covering for him, I think, in her own way for a while. But
Let's talk about what that means because some of our listeners may have not experienced that yet, what covering means. So, when you have a caregiver, especially spouses,
yes,
and one spouse is caring for the other that has memory loss, covering for them, meaning trying not to let other people know that there's a problem.
correct. When you're asking a question directly to the person who may have some impairment, and the spouse jumps in to answer the question and doesn't even give the person you asked the question to the opportunity to answer.
And I wonder if that's because they don't want anyone to know that maybe they can't answer it, or maybe they're more of a controlling person and they want to make sure that the question is answered correctly, because someone with dementia might just answer the question by making something up and it might not be true. So I'm not sure, maybe both scenarios are correct, but she was a cover up for your grandfather.
I also think she was so dedicated to him, and dedicated to making sure that she could take care of everything. And so to admit there was a problem, to admit that she needed help. Somehow she felt like that was in a way a failure of her own.
And that's very common also with
Mhm.
caregivers. They don't want to admit they need help. They feel guilty if they do. They
Right.
try to do it on their own. They want to be Superwoman or Superman and do it all. When your grandfather was having all these memory problems, did you have any chance to spend time with him, or did you ever have to help your grandmother take care of him?
Yes. I will say, and I share this story because I don't want other people to make the same mistake. But when I was so probably I was in my 20s when this was going on. And my grandfather, I'd gone to visit them. They lived in Raleigh, North Carolina. And he was starting to do a little bit of wandering, pacing around their home. He also was always a very trim man with a voracious appetite. And so he started this consistent behavior of starting to eat other people's food. So in other words, then you get into the isolation, because you can't go out to a restaurant, you can't go out to places, because not only would he eat the food on his own plate, he was going to eat the food at the table next door to him as
So
well.
it's grab and go for
Yes.
literally grab and go.
Literally grab and go. And so when I went to visit, I saw some of this behavior happening. I saw her try a daycare, a day stay program. He didn't like it, so immediately that was scrapped as an opportunity to kind of give her a break. And ultimately what happened is she ended up in the hospital with a bleeding ulcer. And because she was trying to do it all, he was starting to get up in the middle of the night. She wasn't getting any sleep, so it just became a constant.
She was wearing herself out.
Mm-hmm. And so I got a call, and fortunately, I was able to have the time. I just got in the car and I drove from Fort Myers to Raleigh, North Carolina, and I stayed for about 2 weeks and helped with some other family members get her moved in to a community where she could be in independent living and he could be in memory care. But in my opinion, that move came way too late.
And it was your first experience of doing something like that with a family member. So you've been in the trenches, and you can speak to that, to how difficult it is and how to be prepared.
Yep.
And when to do it. And
Yes.
I like what you said about being too late, because we're going to talk in the show about when is the time to do it and how to be prepared. So right now we're going to take our quick first commercial break. And when we come back, more with Britton Swank, elder law attorney. So stay with us.
Arden Courts is not just a place to live, it's a place to call home. Residential living combined with quality caregiving. This is the philosophy behind Arden Courts. Communities created exclusively for individuals with Alzheimer's disease and related dementia who would benefit from a safe and structured environment. For additional information about any of the unique services Arden Courts provides, call 888-478-2410 to locate a community nearest you. Inquire about our educational seminars, resource library, or support groups, or simply feel free to ask questions you may have about Alzheimer's and related dementias. At Arden Courts, we know, we understand, and we can help, because memory care is all we do. Remember, call 888-478-2410 for additional information about any of the unique services Arden Courts provides. You are listening to your host, Marcia Teal, an Alzheimer's disease and dementia care expert on CareGiverSolutions.info. If you have a question or wish to share a story, call into the show at 888-565-1470 and talk with Marcia. Now, back to Caregiver Solutions.
Welcome back to Caregiver Solutions. I'm happy to be in Fort Myers on location live at the offices of Britton Swank Elder Law and right beside me is the Britton Swank elder law attorney. So welcome again.
Thank you. Thanks for having me.
Well, I'm so happy that you're here. We're talking about elder law today.
Yes.
And not only do you have that expertise, but you also have experience being a caregiver. Your grandfather was diagnosed with Alzheimer's. You helped take care of him with your grandmother, and you've been through the trenches. So I think that's really important, not only for our audience to hear what you have to say, but also the fact that you understand what they go through. So the first thing I'd like to ask you before we go forward, what's the difference between an elder law attorney, which is what you are,
Right.
and a regular attorney? And why is there a difference, and why is it important to use one and when?
Okay. I think one of the things that makes elder law attorneys a little bit different is our approach. And I heard another elder law attorney sort of explain it this way. And we have, I would think, the most crossover with estate planning attorneys because we do a lot of the same things in terms of preparing documents. We deal with a lot of those issues that people should be addressing while they're alive and well. And hopefully getting their affairs in order. We also deal with issues related to people passing away. So probate, trust administration, if those things are necessary. But what makes, I think, elder law attorneys different is we are very, very, very focused on what's going on with our clients between that time when they're healthy and doing well and able to plan and the time that they're deceased. What's going on with them when they're alive, but they're not in great health, when they're alive, but they need help at home or need help at assisted living or a nursing home, or what other opportunities are out there. Is it memory care? Do they have an attachment to an animal? What we sort of make it our life's work to know what options are out there in our community for our clients.
So is that your philosophy to be that involved, or do you think it's similar for most elder law attorneys?
I really love what I do, and I have wonderful things about, basically wonderful things to say about my colleagues in the area of elder law. I think that when we get together as a section, for example, of the bar or as the members of the Academy of Florida Elder Law Attorneys, people are really passionate about helping their clients. We get, it may not be always the most lucrative, certainly, area of the law in which to practice, but we get hugs and I just got a thank you note from a client from more than 10 years ago and she sends me a Christmas card every year, and it makes me think this is why I do what I do.
Yeah, and I tend to agree with you because I know a lot of elder law attorneys, have had several of them on the show throughout the state of Florida, and they're all as passionate about their clients. The geriatric population, you have to have a heart for the geriatric, because we're talking elder law as
Right.
people are aging and
It's
they're
true.
getting elderly. This is what you're talking about, is staying involved in their lives, because it's just not, here's your legal documents, and then when you die, then we deal with your family. You are keeping this connection with them all the way through as their life changes. So you're there with them through their life changes to help them on a legal basis in any way you can. Plus, you're a resource for them in the community. So thank you for that. We certainly need wonderful, passionate elder law
Well,
attorneys like you.
Again, I enjoy what I do, and there are a lot of specialties in the legal field, and we certainly, I think, as elder law attorneys, if I run across an issue that is really in someone else's field, we like to refer out to those specialties as well.
That's wonderful. So your practice then involves helping people and helping them through their aging process. What's the most common thing that you would say would be a misconception with people when it comes to maybe legal documents, because we're going to talk a little bit about legal documents, things like power of attorney and healthcare surrogate.
Okay.
So I know you have a lot of experience with that because people need those things.
Yes.
So let's talk a little bit about the documents that are needed and what people don't do, what they should do.
Okay. So I think that people tend to do, if they're going to do some planning, and a lot of people have done that. But what I see a lot of in terms of um, conversation with a new client is people are very focused on what's going to happen to my things when I die. They don't really, that's what I need to have a will, or I need to have a trust. I need to make sure XYZ goes to this person when I pass away. And I'm certainly, as the attorney they're coming to, that's important to me to make sure that their wishes are followed. But I think what's more important to me in those moments is, but what about when you're alive and we need to be able to get to your resources to be able to pay your bills? What if it's not about just what happens to your stuff when you pass away? I want to make sure they're taken care of while they're alive. And that we're able to do that in the most efficient way as possible, in a way that carries out their wishes and in a way that gives them the most choices.
So that being said, do you think people wait until a late date before they even think about these things, because they're obviously thinking about dying and where their things are going to go, right? So they must be getting really along in years before they come to you. And do you find that they come late in the game?
In a lot of cases, that's true. I also think that a will is something that people, it's sort of something that everybody knows a little bit about. You see it sort of dramatized in television and in movies, and there's always this exciting reading of the will, which doesn't really happen in that way, but it's something that's out there in common knowledge, I think, in our general population, whereas I do not think that people have that same understanding of a durable power of attorney, which is what I think is kind of a critical piece of the equation, particularly for caregivers.
Right, because explain for those that don't have one yet,
Okay.
maybe they should, but
Yes.
explain what a durable power of attorney does and what happens if someone doesn't have one.
Okay, so a durable power of attorney is a document that allows someone else to manage your finances. So it allows someone else, for example, to pay a bill, sign a check for you, to sign a contract for you, but it allows them to do these things in a way that doesn't commit them personally to be financially obligated. So it's a way to help protect yourself, but can also be a way to help protect those that are trying to help you. You can be very, very specific about what you want to allow someone else to do. And in fact, our current law in Florida requires a lot of specificity. It also requires a lot of initialing in certain areas if you want to allow somebody to do something in particular.
So it's not a good idea to pull a form off the internet or go to the local stationery store and get a pre-made form and fill in the blanks, is it? I know this is a facetious question, but some people actually do that.
I know, and I do understand. I think there's a lot of, attorneys are not known for being the most inexpensive professionals out there. And I think that because of that, people are fearful of sometimes seeing an attorney, that the cost will be something that's not manageable. I also think that these days you can find just about anything on the internet. I checked once to see if there were instructions on how to take out your own appendix just for fun, and lo and behold, I found those too. So
I love that analogy right there, because just like, who would ever think to go online and find out how to take out a body part and think it was okay rather than see a doctor? Same thing with your documents, your legal documents. If you're not versed in legalese, it's not a good thing to just fill in the blanks because there's so much more to it, and you're really doing yourself a disservice.
It's very risky. So it's one of these things where you may save yourself some money in the short term, and there are people who may pull it off beautifully. Those are not the cases that I see. The cases that I see in my office are the ones where it's not worked out. They didn't execute it properly. It's not comprehensive enough. And so one of the problems with these forms that I see is it lulls people into this false sense of security. So they think, oh, everything's okay. I have a durable power of attorney. Well, once your principal, so that's the person who is giving authority to someone else, is called the principal. Once they they lack capacity, they cannot sign a new one. And this is typically the time when people come in to say, gee, we have this problem. What can we do? How can we help?
How can you fix my goof up?
Right. And but that's the thing, they don't realize it's a goof up yet, oftentimes. And so I am in the unfortunate position of having to say, gee, if we had a power of attorney that said this, we had this solution, or we'd have that solution.
Mhm.
Unfortunately, now we're stuck. And so
There's a way to fix it probably, but it's probably more time and trouble and money, right?
well, if we don't have a durable power of attorney that's going to work, and then what we're stuck with is guardianship court, unfortunately.
And that is something that goes through the court system. You have to have a judge involved. It's a lot of time, it's a lot of aggravation, and it's more money.
Unfortunately, it is more money, which is also not news I like to deliver to people. So it's goes back to this idea that when you're having documents prepared, you're not only protecting yourself to help ensure that your wishes are followed, but you're also helping protect those people that you're going to ask to help you. I mean, I really feel that it's all of these things we're talking about are things that you do because you have people in your life that you love, and that you want to make sure things are as easy as possible for them.
Exactly. I was just going to say, you are also giving your loved ones that you want to give things to or
Yes.
help you through your later years. You're giving them a roadmap of what your wishes are and how you want things to be done. And believe me, that is so well welcomed by somebody, rather than, well, I don't know what Aunt Tilly wanted. I don't know what she would have wanted, or I don't know what to do. And I think I'll do this. But then, I've got a brother that says, no, that's not what she wanted. It's something else. So it really prevents a lot of family disruptions and a lot of arguments and family
Absolutely.
dynamics that really could be prevented if people had their legal documents in place before it was too late.
I absolutely agree. And there are some situations where people have never gotten along with one another, and it doesn't matter how great a job you do with your documents, they're not going to get along when you're gone either. But doing your due diligence in terms of getting your affairs in order, I really think is a blessing all around, and it will go a long way to help moving things along in the most efficient way possible.
I've actually seen cases where a stubborn husband would not give his power, would not agree to sign off on a durable power of attorney because he was in control. And in his mind, he knew what he was doing. He didn't need anybody to do his affairs. He wasn't going to sign. You can't force somebody to sign. And then all of a sudden he lost capacity, and obviously he was losing it, and they were trying to get these documents in place, but now it's too late. So what do you tell families when they have a situation where someone's stubborn and they won't do it? I mean, I'm sure you have that situation.
It's interesting that you bring that up. I was actually speaking somewhere once, and I was talking about documents, different documents, and I always try to give people an opportunity to ask questions. And someone in the audience raised this issue about, I really am uncomfortable with the idea of allowing someone else to make decisions when it comes to finances. And in Florida, unlike other states, we do not have what's called a springing power of attorney any longer. So what that means for us Florida residents is when you sign a durable power of attorney, it's effective immediately.
Not just when someone is incapacitated.
Correct.
And that's, I think, one of those control issues because, oh, if I give my son durable power of attorney and he knows that I have all this money in the bank, he literally could go and take it all for himself. I mean, that's what people are afraid of.
And that is also part of the language, I think, of our statute that we have now. You have to be very, very specific about what you're going to allow different people to, your agent to do. And my durable power document before we had our statute change in 2011 was roughly, I would say, somewhere between 8 to 10 pages in length. So fairly detailed, maybe a little bit longer than the average durable power of attorney. Not too bad. Now it's approaching probably 30 pages in length after the statute change. And I don't, I know nobody wants to read that. I don't necessarily want to draft that, but I need to make sure that these topics have been covered with the client and that they have the opportunity to decide what they want to authorize and what they don't.
So some things obviously are optional.
Sure.
You're in that document. So you have to initial some things, but you can leave other things uninitialed if you don't want them.
Correct.
Which gives people more choices, actually.
Correct.
Yeah, that's great.
But it is interesting though, because I had someone come in recently who had executed a durable power of attorney, let's just say within the last 5 years, chose not to initial things, now has a sick loved one, and we're trying to help that person. And I said, do you realize these paragraphs, if this was you that was sick right now, we couldn't help you. And she said, gosh, I didn't realize that I would have to initial those paragraphs for you to be able to help me. And so I think sometimes people are so worried about being exploited, they don't know kind of the flip side, the pros and the cons.
Yeah, there's pros and cons to everything. Well, on that note, we're going to take a commercial break, and when we come back, we're going to be talking about other important documents, including the durable power of attorney that all caregivers and all people should have in their life. So stay with us. We'll be right back.
Arden Courts is not just a place to live, it's a place to call home. Residential living combined with quality caregiving. This is the philosophy behind Arden Courts. Communities created exclusively for individuals with Alzheimer's disease and related dementia who would benefit from a safe and structured environment. For additional information about any of the unique services Arden Courts provides, call 888-478-2410 to locate a community nearest you. Inquire about our educational seminars, resource library, or support groups, or simply feel free to ask questions you may have about Alzheimer's and related dementias. At Arden Courts, we know, we understand, and we can help because memory care is all we do. Remember, call 888-478-2410 for additional information about any of the unique services Arden Courts provides. You are listening to your host, Marcia Teal, an Alzheimer's disease and dementia care expert on CareGiverSolutions.info. If you have a question or wish to share a story, call into the show at 888-565-1470 and talk with Marcia. Now, back to Caregiver Solutions.
Welcome back to Caregiver Solutions. We're live from Fort Myers, Florida. And I'd like to take this opportunity to thank our national sponsor of this program, Arden Courts Memory Care Community. Arden Courts is a leader in memory care. They have 10 communities right here in Florida and many others spread all across the United States. So hopefully there's an Arden Courts Memory Care community near you that you can reach out to because they offer seminars and support groups. But if not, then we still have resources for you provided by Arden Courts. This is the book called the 36-Hour Day Book. It's a wonderful resource for caregivers. It has lots of great information, advice, definitions, written by Dr. Peter Rabins and Nancy Mace. It's in its 5th edition, which means it's always being updated. This is like the Caregiver's Bible.
Really is.
I've heard it called that because it is really a book that caregivers can read either front to back or pick and choose whatever you might need at the time on the topics and the chapters. But the book is yours absolutely free just for watching this program. And all you have to do is call the toll-free number of Arden Courts. Tell them that you heard about this free 36-hour day book offer on the Caregiver Solution Info Show, and they'll be happy to get your name and phone number and address and make sure that they mail a book directly to you. So get a pen and write it down. The number is 888-478-2410. Again, 888-478-2410 for the free 36-hour day book. You'll be really happy that you have. And I am
Great
really
gift.
happy. It's a great gift. Yes,
Yeah.
thank you. And I'm very happy to have my guest here with me today. This is Britton Swank. She's an elder law attorney right here in the Fort Myers area, in a beautiful office, I might say. We're right here
Thank
in
you.
your offices, and we're live. And we're talking about legal documents.
Yes.
And right now, we've just finished talking about durable powers of attorney, what they can do, why it's necessary. What other legal documents, at a minimum, should somebody have in their portfolio?
I really do think that, although I put the emphasis on the durable power of attorney, I do agree that deciding where you want your assets to pass once you're no longer with us is important. So identifying that in a will and deciding who you would like to be in charge in the event we have a probate, or if you prefer to have a trust. And there can be pros and cons to that as well. And a trust isn't the perfect solution for everyone. I do see a lot of people that come in and they've been at a cocktail party, or their neighbor has a trust, and they say, "Oh, I need to have a trust." And we go through that chat, and maybe that's not necessary in their case. But those issues would be addressed in a will or a trust, and then also your healthcare decision making and end of life. I think those are the big topics that really need to be addressed.
And it's really customized for each person. Just as you mentioned, it's not one document fits all.
No. And I one of the common comments that I get, in fact, about trusts is people think that I don't have enough money to have a trust. Surely I don't need a trust. I don't have a lot of money.
Because people think of big monies, right? They think of a
Correct.
millionaire, a billionaire.
Right.
They're the ones that have trust. But I'm glad you brought that up, because I had a customer also who said the same thing. And I said, trusts are not just for the rich and famous. So
Correct.
go ahead and explain why.
Well, it really kind of depends on what your assets are and also what your wishes are. So I can have a client who doesn't own any real estate, is rents at a facility or an independent living somewhere, and maybe they have 2 children. Let's just say in this example, the kids get along. Neither one of them are disabled. They're both adults. That client maybe can put their $1 million or whatever it is in investment accounts and name those 2 children as the pay on death or transfer on death beneficiaries. They can have a good durable power of attorney. So maybe we can help facilitate the transfer of their assets at death without a probate and without a trust, simply by being smart about the way they title their assets.
Right, because it's a joint account or paid on death if in trust for somebody,
Right.
which goes directly to them.
And my preference is, when I have these conversations with my clients, is I'm not a big fan of making your children or beneficiaries joint owners on your assets.
And what's the problem with that? I mean, I can imagine.
Well, I think what are the issues is certainly people get very focused on solving this issue of probate. So if they start to think, oh, if I just have, as long as I have an owner that's still alive, then I've avoided the probate. Well, you have perhaps, but you've also created a number of other issues. One, you've made a gift to the other person that you put on the account.
I hear tax here, right?
Right. Or even if there are no taxes due, depending on the amount, you could have triggered at least the filing of a return. And I know how everyone loves to do tax returns. Then we have a liability issue. We have this issue of what if that joint owner, what if that child is filing for bankruptcy? And I've gotten that call from a client after, being concerned about joint owners. Well, is it a problem that so and so is filing for bankruptcy, or they're getting divorced, or they've been in an accident and are being sued? And the answer is yes, that's a problem. And so while I think it's certainly convenient to have maybe one account with joint owners with a relatively small amount, not your entire life savings on it, but then have beneficiaries on the other accounts if that's the best plan for you. But you also need to make sure there's a durable power of attorney so we can get to those assets to pay your bills if that's what needs to happen. But you can also have somebody that has a house and a lot or a cabin in North Carolina and $200,000, and maybe they need a trust, because now we've got multiple pieces of property. So it's not really about how much you have; it's about how those assets are invested
and who you want them to go to.
Correct. Because certainly minors, if you have grandchildren that are not adults, that presents some issues. And if you have a disabled beneficiary, a disabled adult child, or in some cases, I've got a case now where the parent is in their 90s and one of their adult children is memory impaired. And so we have concerns about assets passing to someone who may be on public benefits by the time this happens.
And who can't handle
Correct.
those assets once they're transferred.
Correct.
And has no capacity to make those types of decisions. So that's really complicated. But I think that the point here for everybody listening is that don't wait, get all of these things done, but because you could change your mind, right?
Absolutely. You, as long as you have the capacity to execute those
the key word right there.
You certainly have the ability to change your mind, to revoke them. And I have clients who call for a variety of reasons over time and make changes. It could be that someone passes away unexpectedly, and or there's a falling out with someone and they, for whatever reason, no longer have a lot of faith in their decision making. It could be any number of things, and those are those are certainly areas where you can make changes.
So it sounds like seeing an elder law attorney would give people peace of mind. You're right, and not it would eliminate the what ifs and the situations that you don't want to happen. You're covered, basically. You've got it all covered.
I think that's certainly part of what all elder law attorneys are trying to help people with. We can't give our clients all the answers. We wish we could. We wish we had a crystal ball and could see how things are playing out. But I know that I feel a lot of satisfaction in at least being able to tell people there's hope. I mean, there are possibilities, there are solutions, and these are the things you can be focusing on. But the decisions are ultimately up to them to make about how they want to proceed. But sometimes just knowing you have options, I think, is a way to give people some relief.
Right. Yeah, options are very important. Well, we're going to exercise our option right now and go to our last commercial break. So stay with us. More to come from Britton Swank, elder law attorney in Fort Myers. We'll be right back.
Arden Courts is not just a place to live, it's a place to call home. Residential living combined with quality caregiving. This is the philosophy behind Arden Courts. Communities created exclusively for individuals with Alzheimer's disease and related dementia who would benefit from a safe and structured environment. For additional information about any of the unique services Arden Courts provides, call 888-478-2410 to locate a community nearest you. Inquire about our educational seminars, resource library, or support groups, or simply feel free to ask questions you may have about Alzheimer's and related dementias. At Arden Courts, we know, we understand, and we can help because memory care is all we do. Remember, call 888-478-2410 for additional information about any of the unique services Arden Courts provides. You are listening to your host, Marcia Teal, an Alzheimer's disease and dementia care expert on CareGiverSolutions.info. If you have a question or wish to share a story, call into the show at 888-565-1470 and talk with Marcia. Now, back to Caregiver Solutions.
We're back, and my guest is Britton Swank, elder law attorney here in Fort Myers, and we've been talking about elder law. We've been talking about durable power of attorneys, why they're important, what they actually do, what they cover. So I'm curious, Britton, in your practice, are there any obstacles that you come across from your clients in general?
Well, as a matter of fact, we do run into some challenges. One of them is we do have an intake process, and I'm going to say my colleagues across the state are very similar in that respect. I think most of us that practice in this area ask a lot of questions of our clients right off the bat, and it's takes some time and a little bit of work to get all that information gathered together.
What kind of information are you speaking about?
Well, I've done this for my own home, for my own household, and so I can tell you from experience, you need to have some ideas about who you'd like to be in charge in certain areas. And in other words, in financial areas, if you've got minor children, who would you want to raise those children if you can't do that yourself? Healthcare decision making, end of life issues. So those are certainly things that come up. But we also ask questions about finances, because part of what we're doing is trying to make sure that things, whether someone decides to have a trust or not to have a trust, or we want things to go as smoothly as we possibly can. And people, though, feel a lot of times that I don't need to know where their assets are or how they're titled.
So how are you supposed to help them if you don't have the information to work with?
It is very difficult. And so what ends up happening is a lot of our initial consultation, our time together, is really me giving hypotheticals, and I'm not able to answer any questions specifically about them. It's kind of like asking, I think, a surgeon to do surgery without diagnostics. I just can't give you good advice if I don't know how your assets are titled. And I'll give you an example. And this happened very early on in my practice as an attorney. I was much younger then, and I had a client who didn't want to bring statements to me. And he told me on my intake materials that he had an account at a particular bank and that it was set up to be POD, which means pay on death, his daughter. And I made a note that he didn't want to give me the statements. Well, years later, when he passed away, it was not POD. It was a power of attorney account, which ends at death. And had he provided me with those statements, I would have been able to see that he was incorrect and needed to get that fixed. And so that created a probate where one would not have been necessary.
Wow, that was a big mistake.
It was an expensive mistake for his family, unfortunately.
So with power of attorney, we talked about getting all the information up front so that you can do the best job for the clients. What about healthcare surrogate? Because you have healthcare decisions in addition to making financial decisions for someone. So how important is it for someone to have a healthcare surrogate or healthcare proxy?
Again, this is your opportunity to be able to have a voice at a time when you literally can't speak for yourself. So your healthcare surrogate is someone that's going to make decisions for you, medical decision making, and also be looking for that direction on end of life issues. I think with all of the documents that we've talked about, as part of that decision making process, who you pick for a particular job is extremely important. I have a lot of clients who will tell me, well, I want Susan to be first, and I want Cindy to be second, and I want Jennifer to be third. And I'll say, well, tell me why Susan is the best suited to be your medical decision maker. Well, the answer is almost always she's the first child. She was born first. And I'm just going to say that the order in which we enter this earth, sort of in the family unit, is not the bar for determining who's the best person for a job. So I really think you need to put some time and some thought into who you pick for what job, because you may have people in your life that are extremely astute, organized, um, type A person that if you need your checkbook balance, they are the person for that job. And there may be other people in your life who really that is not their area of expertise or
Maybe you have
comfort.
somebody warm and fuzzy with a
Yeah.
compassionate attitude and a heart and would want something the way you would want it.
Correct.
And would know how you felt about it, and you put it in writing and they will follow through.
Correct. And you certainly don't want to name someone that is not willing to follow your wishes, because it's about what you want. It's not about what they want. And you need to be certain that this person is willing to carry those instructions out for you. So just because you name one person as your personal representative in your will, and that person may be your power of attorney, that doesn't mean they're the right person to be your surrogate.
So what you're saying is you can have different people in charge of different areas. So you can have one person be your power of attorney and another person be your healthcare proxy.
Absolutely.
It makes sense. It really does.
Absolutely. I have a sister-in-law who is just as sharp as she can be. She would be a wonderful trustee, a wonderful agent, personal representative. I would not want her making my medical decisions for anything in this world, because she would probably pass out as soon as she walked in the hospital. She does not like anything medical. That's just not something she wants to deal with. And I don't need another catastrophe in the middle of my own catastrophe.
Point well taken. Yes. So what else if I'm a client sitting here with you today, and thank you so far for all this wonderful information. What else would you advise me in general before I would leave our time together?
I think that gathering information together is really helpful for other people. So in other words, even when I go out and speak in communities or at a church or for an organization, I encourage people to go onto my website, download our intake, go ahead and fill it out, even if you never come in to see me. It gets those questions, gets you thinking about the questions, and gets the information all in one place.
Well, I'm glad you said that, because this is the time where I would like for you to tell everybody how they can contact you and where your website is so they can download that information. So feel free to let everybody know.
So if you want to spend maybe a rainy afternoon filling out an intake document to get yourself organized, but then one thing you can do is visit my website. which is www.swankelderlaw.com. And on our website, we've got a lot of information about some of the topics that we talked about today, and also some intake information. And you can download that information, print it out, and complete it. It's going to ask about bank accounts and how things are titled. But I will tell you, if you take the time to go through that and keep it in a safe place, and just tell your whoever's going to be in charge, or whoever your go-to person is going to be, look, if something happens, this is where you can find that information.
And that
It will
is
be
so
helpful.
very helpful and very valuable, because we're talking about elder law and thinking that people are going to die when they're old, but we never know when it's going to happen. And if you go ahead and have this information, at least, even if you haven't taken it to an attorney, it's going to help the person left to deal with all of this information. It's going to help them tremendously.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
I mean, and on that note, be careful about going paperless. I am a huge recycler and, proponent of the earth and trying to take care of it. But I will say that's very hard to come behind. If there are not statements coming in the mail and people can't get into an account, it's very hard to figure out what someone even has.
Absolutely. The digital world is getting more complicated all the time.
Yes, indeed.
Yeah, it's very, very difficult. Well, I want to thank you for being the guest here today. It's been a wonderful time spending with you, learning all about elder law and getting to know you.
I've enjoyed it.
Yeah, it's been a lot of fun, and I want to thank our audience for joining us today too. Joining in, this is a new experience with our brand new microphones. We're so professional now, and hopefully the sounds are coming out loud and clear so everybody can learn. Also want to let you know, don't forget to get your free book, The 36-Hour Day, by calling 888-478-2410. And last but not least, don't forget, give somebody a hug, because they need it and so do you. And thank you again so very much.
It's been my pleasure. I appreciate it.
Thank you. We'll see you next time on caregiversolutions.info, Caregiver Solutions Info Show. Tell your friends and family about it, and we'll see you next week, same time, same place. Take care, everybody.
Thanks for joining us for this week's Caregiver Solutions with Marsha Teal. Join us next week as Marsha, who has 15 years of Alzheimer's disease and dementia care experience, brings you more needed information to help with the care of your loved one. This show can be seen again on caregiversolutions.info, and questions can be left on the site, which may be used on the program to help others. See you next week for more Caregiver Solutions.